Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next in our series on mental health diagnoses. I want to take a little bit of a detour today to narcissistic personality disorder. This is something that shows up quite regularly in discussions I have with people, and it's quite often that we hear people refer to others as, they're narcissistic or they're a narcissist. And so I just wanted to spend a few minutes on the diagnoses just to clarify a few things, because narcissism is one of those diagnoses where it really falls on a spectrum, which means that the trait of narcissism exists in everyone. We all have a self-interested streak, and in certain cases, thinking of oneself first or doing what is in one's own self-interest or, viewing oneself as good at something is very beneficial, and we actually need a certain amount of it. And people have varying amounts as you move along the spectrum. So you might have someone who's more self-interested than others, but it's not in necessarily a clinical sense where they might come across as arrogant and self-interested, but it's not necessarily causing problems in their life per se. They're not getting fired from their jobs. They're not in great distress over it. They're just, they act as quite, someone who thinks quite highly of themselves, and they'd be higher up the spectrum of narcissism, but they don't actually fall into narcissistic personality disorder. A person who has narcissistic personality disorder, they are absolutely very grandiose, but they also lack a certain amount of empathy. And so when we talk about lacking empathy, it means basically that I don't feel, or I can't guess what something might make another person feel, and I may not even think about it. So for example, if I drop a glass on the floor and it breaks, I'm going to feel, oh, well, whoops, probably shouldn't have done that. I may be a little annoyed at what happened, but I'm not going to feel empathy for the glass that hit the floor because it's a thing. And so people who lack empathy or have very low levels of empathy, they will feel the very same thing about hurting a person. So they may say, oh, whoops, probably shouldn't have done that because the outcome was maybe unpleasant for them. Or they may just decide to be manipulative, so they don't have to, admit that maybe they made an error or that they can get people to do what they want. The piece of narcissism that is a little more specific to the personality disorder also is the level of grandiosity. So people without the personality disorder, they probably think highly of themselves, but it's probably within a relatively logical space. So for example, they may think, oh, I'm really, really good at, I don't know, math. And so I'm just going to be the best accountant in my firm and the most valuable person there. And there's a level of, logic kind of getting to that particular line of thinking. They're never going to start out with, oh, I'm kind of good at addition, so that means I'm going to, or I should be the finance minister of the country because I'm just so good at this. So you tend not to see that as much. Whereas with the personality disorder, you do. There's a level of expectation that everyone around them should expect or recognize how amazing they are, and that they deserve to be, promoted into positions where, we might call it actually entitlement more so in today's language, but promoted into really important positions because they just can't understand why people can't see how intelligent, how smart, how good they are at things. And then they also will believe that the reason they're not in those positions is because other people are holding them back. Now, there are different types of narcissists, and it's depending on whose theory you read, they may label them slightly different things. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that not everyone around you who's showing self-interest is actually narcissistic. So if you're wondering that, first of all, check and see, do they show empathy? If someone is hurt, do they feel badly? If they say something that causes someone pain, do they feel badly? Can they guess how another person might be feeling? And then check in and see, what amount of grandiosity are you actually looking at? So do they think they're really good at something they can do well? Or do they have a level of slight illogicalness in terms of, okay, well, you can't be, the person who delivers political newspapers and, wondering why you're not in the Senate. So I think that that's something else to check in on. And then the last one is to check in on their level of entitlement. So if they're doing something or they're being manipulative and you bring it to their attention and you have a discussion and they believe that they are justified in everything they did, even though someone who is in a position perhaps not, in that position, but perhaps not narcissistic, would look at it and go, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or, that sounds kind of actually bad when you put it that way. Someone with narcissistic personality disorder is really going to double down on it. And, they're perfectly justified in what they've done because they are, infallible as a person. So I guess one of the things I would probably stress most is that, really spend some time thinking before you start applying the term narcissistic to people, or narcissistic, narcissism in terms of, they're a narcissist. Because when you use it kind of in the pop psychology term, I mean, most of us know what it means, but then often people will really get confused in terms of, well, okay, so if this person is a narcissist, but then that person is diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, well, then obviously this narcissist must be the same. And it just creates a lot of confusion. So I would really encourage people to, think about the terminology you're using in that regard and, have a look at the people that you have labeled narcissists. Are they actually diagnosable, kind of as the armchair psychologist, so to speak? Do you feel like they actually have some clinical problems in that area? Or do you think they're just maybe someone who's a little higher on the narcissistic spectrum and they're not quite clinical? They're just, kind of that annoying level of narcissistic. we all can picture someone like that. So absolutely. And also keeping in mind that, the only person who can actually diagnose a narcissistic personality disorder is a qualified professional. And unfortunately, someone who's looking for a diagnosis, that professional actually has to spend time with the individual they're diagnosing. So, for example, if you bring me a story of someone in your life who you think may have narcissistic personality disorder, we can discuss it, but I can't diagnose that person, or I can't say yes they do or no they don't, without actually having spent time with them and assessing them myself. So that's what I wanted to touch base on with narcissism, just because, like I said, it's something I run into quite often, and I hope you found this helpful. And I will be continuing on with the next mental health disorder session, the next video I put out.